Please feel free to eat. I think the food is delicious. I was cooking the whole night. I've been cooking for you guys the whole night, so be kind and eat it. It was good, right? My name is Javier Campos. I'm the son of Roque Alejandro and Luz Angela, the grandson of Nestor Julio and Concepcion, Sara and Ramon. I'm the father of Michelangelo and Francesco. Mi nombre es Javier Campos. Soy el nieto de Néstor y Concepción, Ramón y Sara, el hijo de Roque y Luz Ángela, y el padre de Michelangelo y Francesco. Welcome. Welcome. Let's see. Today we are doing one of the multiple events that we have in a SLIC, a Salt Lake Community College, because we're celebrating the Hispanic Heritage Month. So on November 1st and 2nd, we will have also Dia de los Muertos. You are more than welcome to join us for this event and have free food and have also some craft activities and have fun and learn about the Mexican-American culture. And today we want to create a safe space. This is not a debate, this is a panel. So we are delighted. We have Senador Luz Escamilla, we have also Ojeda, we have also Mayra Guadalupe, Sedano Robles, Consul Jose B. Borjon, and Álvaro Martinez Jr. And they will introduce themselves and they will talk a little bit what they're doing in the community. So let's start. I have a few questions here that my wonderful students wrote for the panelists, but feel free to ask any questions. Professor, no, not professor anymore. Assistant Dean McKen Sorensen will be working with the mic. So she's right there, and if you have any questions, you can always raise your hand, or we have another mic on the side, and our panelists will answer. So thank you so much for being here. This is an honor. Would you like to please introduce yourself? And I was raised in the Latino community, we say ladies first. So, would you please?
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. My name is Luz Escamilla. There we go. All the way to the math. But very close. Good afternoon. My name is Luz Escamilla. I'm a state senator. I represent Senate District 1. That is the northwest quadrant in Salt Lake City and half of West Valley. So you are not in my district. And Salt Lake Community College is not, but we do have the West Point Salt Lake Community College campus now, which is beautiful. It's a very exciting development in my district, actually, in the back of my backyard, literally. So a $53 million building. It's always nice to bring those things to your district. My name is, like I said, Luz. I was born and raised in Mexico. I grew up in Mexico City, Torreon, Coahuila, Durango, and Tijuana, Baja California. So my dad used to work, he just passed away 2 months ago, so it's still hard sometimes when I talk about him. But my dad was an engineer by trade, but worked most of the time in banking in Mexico, and so we moved a lot. My mom is also an engineer. She has actually, she was a professor her entire life, and my dad retired as a professor of higher education institutions in Mexico, both engineers. So I'm the only one not in STEM in my family. I end up in politics. But I also work in banking. I work for Science Bank. I've been working with Science Bank for the last 12 years and in the Senate for 10. All I can say is when it comes to, it's hard to, I always don't like introducing myself because I don't think I have that great of a story, but I am here because my dad had a dream of the American dream. It really is the beacon of our family's American dream. So both my brother and I had a huge blessing, an opportunity to come and pursue our higher education here in the United States. And that's when I moved here. If I tell you the year, then you'll know how old I am. But you can already Google that. So that was in 1996. Well, gosh, guys, they're like the gasp, like, moved here to go to school and went to the University of Utah and got both my undergraduate and my master's degree from the University of Utah. And then in 2008, I was crazy enough to run for the state senate, and been there since 2008. So this is my 10th session as a state senator, first Latina in the Senate elected, and the first immigrant ever elected in the legislature. And it's great to be able to share those stories. It's taken me this long to understand the power of stories and the power of sharing them and talking to people about who you are and your background. We all make assumptions, and we know what happens when we make assumptions about people's histories and their stories. And I've learned to really talk more about your stories in order to connect. And I've learned that there's more things that we have in common than the differences between anyone. So I've had to use that in order to be able to accomplish things in the legislature, which is an interesting place to work and try to make things happen as a member of the minority party, as a member of a minority, not only from a political perspective, but also gender and race and ethnicity. So I've learned that stories do make a difference. So I appreciate any opportunity to share and learn from other people's stories. I live in Rose Park with my husband, and we have 6 children, and we have babies, so they keep me busy, and teenagers, and then we have older kids. So we have the gamma, so if you guys want to talk about any of those stages in life, I'm ready. And just, grateful for the opportunity to share more about perspectives and just the importance of listening to others. And again, thank you for the invite.
Hi everyone, my name is Alonso. I have 2 last names, like a lot of us probably in this room as well, which is kind of cool. I grew up in Peru. I was born in Peru and came to the US when I was 11, actually. So my parents separated when I was about 10, and for the year before I came to the US, my mom had come. So she's the first person in my family to make that trek all the way to the United States. And honestly, I think I owe her everything, right? It wasn't until I came to the US when I was again 11 years old at age, and we left the airport, walked into our apartment that we were sharing with another family, that we entered a room that, that changed my life forever. So what I saw was, there was 2 beds, 2 like twin-size beds that had been made exactly the same, one for my brother and one for me, and there was an air mattress on the floor that my mom kept for herself. And when I saw that completely broke me. I remember going to the bathroom and honestly crying, right? I was just like, oh my gosh, like my mom, who I thought had left me, who I thought had been separated from me, was doing this for me. And honestly, that's what set me into my trek into education. I said to myself, the only way I can get back to my mom is by getting a higher ed. And so I started in 6th grade in the US. I started to go to school, excelling what I could, which at the moment was math, given that I couldn't speak the language. And then eventually, I also had a chance to go to middle school, high school here in Utah. I went to Bryant High School, which then closed down. And then I went to College High School where I finished. And then I was able to get my undergrad at the U in sociology. I did the honors track as well, which allowed me to actually do a lot of research in my own community. I stem from, my mom had worked in the hotel industry, so I was fascinated by it, and that honestly also had a lot to do with the way in which I saw the world, right? How a lot of hospitality industry people are treated in the employment and the workforce, I guess. So that also affects the way in which I look at the work that I do currently with undocumented students, right? I'm here to serve our youth, but also the children of my mother, right? Like I'm also here to serve the children of the people who made the long trip to the US to work hard and give back. So I currently have the honor of directing the first training center in Utah. We have it at the University of Utah. So we work with undocumented students as well as the children of undocumented immigrants and anyone else who needs support in accessing higher ed. I also had a chance to really work with youth in a youth program called Mestizo Arts and Activism, and I see some faces here, which I'm really excited to see that as well. And And last but not least, I'm also back in school doing a PhD in sociology and looking at the intersections between immigration, labor, and education.
Buenas tardes, I'm Mayra Sedano, Mayra Guadalupe Sedano Robles. I'm trying to reclaim my whole name. I was born and raised in Jalisco, Mexico. I immigrated to the U.S. as an undocumented immigrant when I was 11 years old. I had the privilege to go to school here, and I graduated from Highland High back in 2005, and I graduated from the U in 2010. Ever since, I've had the privilege to be at Comunidades Unidas, which is a local nonprofit here in Utah. Our mission is to empower Latinas and Latinos to recognize their own potential and become a positive force for change in the larger community. The reason why I identify myself as an organizer is because of my immigrant experience. So I lived as an undocumented immigrant when DACA did not exist. Like myself and so many others, we had the privilege to go to college, and we benefited from in-state tuition. In 2014, my uncle was detained, and definitely that empowered me to continue to do the work that I do. I feel very honored to work with a lot of youth, to work with a lot of people that have the passion to create positive changes in our communities. And yeah, thank you.
Buenas tardes. Okay, this is working. Buenas tardes, my name is Álvaro Martinez Magallón. I currently go by Junior. So if you guys see me around the halls or whatever, please say hi. I'm honestly just your average student. Many people ask me, well, how did you become student body president?
Change the mic.
Yeah. No, is it working?
Now it's working.
Now it's working. Okay, this one works? This one works? Okay. Like I was saying, many people ask me, well, how did you become student body president? And I just said, I just tried. Like, honestly, I went to Hunter High School. I moved here when I was 9 years old. I'm from Michoacan, Mexico. And my life completely changed once I moved to the U.S. Sorry, I didn't think I was going to be emotional about this, but I hope that this panel, because I feel honored to be here with all these wonderful people, and I've lived through many different difficult situations throughout my life. And people look at me and they're just like, how did you do it? They talk to me about different things. Their parents were detained, they were sent back to Mexico, and I haven't had that experience in my life yet. My mom is undocumented, and we live in fear every day because we're not allowed to travel anywhere because we're afraid that there's going to be an immigration stop somewhere, you know? And this is the first time that I get to talk to people about being successful, and my story is just an average story, but the change that we can make as average people is huge. So I hope that you look at people like these people right here and you make a difference, because it really matters. The average person really matters, and I made a difference in my community because I'm here and I'm representing every student at Salt Lake Community College. And I hope that you guys go out there as high school students or as just an average person and make a difference in your community, because it really does matter.
Buenas tardes. My name is Jose Vicente Borjón Lopez Coterilla. That's the long version, and that's what I usually use. Jose Borjón. I'm a Mexican government official representing the governor of Mexico here in the state of Utah. I studied in a public university in Mexico City and have had the experience of traveling abroad in different countries but especially in the United States, and that's where my career has been since the early beginnings, and the main interest has been for me to serve to my community, and I have been doing that to the best of my abilities, and each case, each story, each day we can help our community, who is large and vibrant in this country. Over 12 million Mexicans here in the state. Over 35 million have Mexican origin in the United States. Over 300,000 in the state of Utah have Mexico as origin. So the footprint of my country, of my heritage, and my culture, of our culture is important and relevant as always. And my interest and my mission and my goal is that this be respected, this be taken into consideration, and that our people who are here, who are contributing, who are studying, who are living and fighting, that their efforts can be recognized. And I do this as a consul does, which is to use the best of its bullet pulpit and talking with the government officials, but also hoping to work and network with organizations that are committed to the same mission, and that is how we multiply an effort to have an impact in the community, and that is why we honor ourselves to have, like in this table, friends who are working with the community, who we add up through our government projects, and this way we can have an impact. I think that it's relevant as always to recognize the importance of the Hispanic or Latino community. Really, that's something to go into deeper. And what are we going to do in the near future as a community, as a diverse country of immigrants, as this has been always the United States, and at the same time, how we, in my case, for example, in Mexico, how can we take the best advantage of such a large diaspora of Mexican origin here in the United States, so that also my country can benefit of this large presence. And that is, the kind of questions we ask ourselves every day, and how we try to solve them makes a difference. So I'm interested in hearing about you, your interests, your challenges, so that we can also continue doing our work better to serve those who are here. And that's something I appreciate. Thank you everyone for this opportunity to share a little bit on what we are doing as an office, but also as individuals to have an impact for our community here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. About 15 years ago, when I moved from Colombia, South America, I started taking my classes here at Soleil Community College. In fact, Assistant Dean McKenzie was my teacher and a big mentor. And I was told, my first class, I was told, there's no way. With that accent and lack of language, there's no way. I got that from somebody, and I remember Professor Sorensen told me, yes you can, yes you can. And I finished here, I moved to University of Utah. I took my classes at the University of Utah. Senator Luces Camilla was in one of my classes with Irene Ota presenting. And I got my master from the University of Utah, working on my PhD as well. So they told us, you can't, and we answered, sí se puede. That's what we do, sí se puede. These questions are from my students. I'm a Mexican-American student, social work students. And I honor every single question because they're the future. And they care about the diversity, and equity, and equality. And so the first question will be, and it's open to the panel. It says, let me see if I can read my glasses. What is the biggest challenge facing the Latinx community in Utah? What are some things that we can do to help to solve that problems, or those problems? So what are some of the challenges that the Latinx community faces in Utah, and what can we do to solve those problems? He's open to the panel.
Let me. So I think both the Latino community has to do a lot with access, and maybe it has to do a lot with income and access for many of our community members. And I think whether you're an immigrant or a refugee, or you are the 5th or 6th generation of literally the border across you, because we have within our community people that their families were here before, so the border crossed them, they didn't cross the border. But there is an institutionalization of racism that we cannot undermine and just forget about it. And it's always a difficult conversation. And I've had people in the last couple of months, people that I respect and work with, saying, well, should I feel guilty about what happened 100 years ago? Or, and I'm like, well, no, you don't have, I don't care if you feel guilty or not. I think it doesn't change anything. I think it's acknowledging the fact that there's access and privileges. And the more education you have, the more access and more privileges you have. So when we talk about challenges, is how do we close achievement gaps? So I'm going to tell you what I am working on, because I think this is monumental. It's not going to be, there's not a silver bullet solution for any of these problems, and there's complexities behind. So as a state senator, I have no say on the immigration conversation, and it's very frustrating. And we can have a whole panel on immigration and the bill we worked on, and I proposed that bill years ago, and we can get into that. Right now, it's horrible with this Trump administration. It's a nightmare. So that does create a psyche. It creates it will create a lot of behavioral mental health issues for many, post-traumatic stress disorders, and let's not even get started on the children that were, removed from their parents. So there's that where I feel my limitations as a state senator versus a federal, an elected official at the federal level. So what am I doing now in order to close gaps is I'm focusing on zero, the age of 0, so prenatal care, because that's the key. Our children are starting kindergarten with achievement gaps. I can't close, those are hard to close if we don't start when they're in the mommy's belly. And that's hard, and it's hard to find people to understand how critical it is to start investing in children at that age when they're like fetuses, okay? So if we can start with very aggressive home visiting programs, which I run legislation on this, so if anyone is interested, I passed legislation to create a pay-for-success model for home visiting programs because I'm convinced of the return on investment. So we start with moms and with families at the age of, before they're born. We address women's health. So to me, women are the key. Whether you're Latina, Native American, Asian, white, it doesn't matter. Women can carry the entire change in babies and the children's lives. So if I can have a mom that's healthy, that's not suffering from postpartum depression, that has access to quality care, whether it's prenatal and after birth, they can take care of their babies. They can go back into the workforce and be more successfial. They can then educate themselves, finish college, which we don't have in Utah. We have a lot of women that don't graduate from college. Even though they enter the college field, they don't graduate. But the only way I can do that is by keeping them in a safe place. So how is that safe? Adequate childcare, affordable childcare, with living wages, affordable living, home and housing. So I'm now focusing my work, and if I want to have a successful, healthy group of young men and women, and it happens to be that the fastest growing group of babies are Hispanic in Utah, we have the fastest growing growth in rate, then I need to invest on home visiting, so 0 to 3 or prenatal 3, and then make sure those kids are safe at the age of 4, because then there's a gap, because you don't go to kindergarten at 4, you go at 5. What do you think parents do when their kids are 4? Like, oh, I'm sorry, you're gonna be for a year just wandering in the streets, good luck. So you have this 0 to 3, and there's some programs for that preschool component, and then there's nothing for 4-year-olds. There's some programs out there that I'm trying to make sure parents know about, and then you have kindergarten. So I'm focusing on that. By the time you're trying to intervene in grade school, you already lost a lot of our kids. That's why they're behind. So how do I close that achievement gap? It's I close them starting at a very young age. So to me, that's a challenge that we have because it's expensive, because many of these families have no access, because many of these moms are struggling just to feed their families and maybe in single home units, which makes it even more difficult. So I'm here to ask you, if you want to make a difference, help me then start working and talking about this 0 to 16, instead of our education of saying K-12 used to be now, and now it's K-16. I'm like, no, we should talk 0 or prenatal 16 and start making this in a comprehensive approach, and having moms be healthy, women can make a huge difference if we just provide them the tools, and we're not doing it. So to me, it's about focusing on babies at a very early age and moms. Thank you.
So this is a loaded question because I think there is a lot of challenges that we face, of course, but there's a lot of opportunities for us to address them as well, right? So one of the biggest areas of work that I like and enjoy and believe in is youth, right? Youth empowerment, youth leadership. I think that youth have such a great opportunity to create change, right? I think all of you in this room, actually, I'm looking especially at the young folk, like, honestly, like, so many times in our school system was not developed to, really teach us how to think critically or how to engage in change, right? But there's programs out there in the community that will help with that as well. And I think that schools should adopt those models to truly engage youth in creating that change, right? So what does that mean? So there are these different approaches to creating research and creating change, including community-based research, for example. I think that involving youth in actually being the stakeholders and saying, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm experiencing. You are the experts of your own lives, right? Like, you don't need teachers to tell you what you're going through. You don't need teachers to tell you what you're living through. You can tell them. And I think that's for me really important. We have a senator with us today, and we often don't hear from you. I think there's an echo with the mic. Yeah, let me try. I don't want to hear your ears. Is that better? Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Still here, but it's good. But yeah, so what I'm thinking about is, especially in the Latinx community, like, how can we involve youth in creating change, right? How can we involve youth in becoming those agents that go up to, like, the senators, and voice their opinions? Like, we want this, we want that, we want change, and what does that look like? It can come from you. Right? A lot of times people tell you like, oh, you're the future, but that's true, but you're also the present, right? You're also what's currently happening. You're also the people who have power and voice and can create change and can go out there and actually make things happen. If you want something to change in your schools, talk about it. Like, speak up, like, come together, join forces, challenge ideas that are recurring for ages. People a lot of times think that policy is static, and it's not. Policy was created by people who thought of it in one particular way. You have the power to change that because you are also, part of this community, and you also have a voice, and you're also an agent of change. So for me, that's one of the main priorities, in my work, and especially when it comes to students and youth. I also think that education has a huge potential, but I also acknowledge that schools, again, have not been developed to cater to your needs, and especially right now, right? I mean, we still run a curriculum that was so antiquated that it's no longer relevant. So how can we make sure that we create spaces in your schools where you can, engage in critical thinking and think about how you want to engage in your communities and to create change for yourselves and your families and your parents and cousins, siblings, etc. I will stick to that. I also think that labor is another area that we need to address, right? I think there's a lot of labor inequality, right? A lot of people in our communities work in the low-skilled service sector, which I hate that term, because honestly, I think everything and anything requires skills, and people are, brilliant, and people have, regardless of what industry you work in, you have power, right? You are someone, you can create change, and we need to think of everybody and anyone in this community as an expert, and let's tap into that, right? I think that's extremely important for us.
What I wanted to share is that I believe that as human beings, we don't live in single issue lives. Therefore, at least in the areas that I work, and I might have the privilege to be the community engagement and immigrant rights manager at Comunidades Unidas, and a lot of the work that I do is rooted in organizing, empowerment, and providing access to different services. definitely, what can we do, right? So the first thing is definitely, we need to acknowledge that we all have privileges, right? Because when we are organizing, we don't want to be perpetuating the systems that we're trying to reform. So definitely acknowledging our own privileges. Then, super important, right? In organizing, as a community organizing, and truly believe in the power that we have. Definitely, let's keep organizing. If you are allies, your work is highly needed with all communities, especially communities of color. But remember, acknowledge your privileges. And something with that is to always keep the families and the communities affected at the center of everything that we're doing, right? Definitely my passion is in immigrant rights and immigration, and I do hope, and the first time that I organized, it was when I was 15. I was in Highland High School, and we had one of the biggest raids here in Utah. And ever since, that's been my passion. I do it for me, for my family, and for my community. And my hopes are that we continue to organize to bring comprehensive and humane reform to all of our families that are here without documents, and that every single day they make contributions to our state and to our nation. So, with that, I also hope that, we tell everyone that everyone has rights with and without documents, that we empower one another, that we acknowledge our power. And for those of us that have the privilege to vote, that, that we make our voices heard. Right now, we have an amazing campaign at Comunidades Unidas, and that's my call to action for all of you. If you can't get registered to vote today, because that's one way to keep organizing. We need to make our voices heard. And our campaign is called Vota por Dos, or Vote for Two. Why? Because we want to acknowledge that it is a privilege, and for those of us that live in mixed status families, it's really important that we take that privilege very seriously, and that we vote for somebody else that doesn't have that privilege. So that's my call to action for all of you today. Thank you.
For me, I think the thing that pertains the most is education. Like many of these guys have said, there's many different challenges that are happening for our community, but I see one of them being the amount of students that we get at the college. We are underrepresented, and how are you as an individual going to change that? I just graduated from Hunter High School 3 years ago, and for me, I had to go out of my way to figure out what my next step was going to be, and so it really wasn't a hard opportunity for me because I'm a first generation student. So how can you as individuals go out there and help people like myself who didn't have anybody? My advice to you is to go out and look at your community and see what needs change. Also, look for allies. Who can help me create this change? And then finally, find your reason why. Why is it that you want to make such great change in your community? And I think if you do all those things, you could be successful at creating change and empowering others, because that's what we need.
Well, thank you. In my opinion, and it has to do a lot with what has been said here, the main challenge of the Latinx community in the state of Utah has to do that we don't have power. We don't have representation, except for very distinguished exceptions like Senador Escamilla. But where are the Hispanic city council members? Where are in the school boards, and the universities, and the boards, and that's where the decisions are made. And we don't have people there. Now, that's the true and difficult story ever since I arrived in Utah. That's the question I've been asking: where is our community represented? Oh, we have a lot of friends, we have allies, and people who see and love this community for what we're doing and contributing, but we don't have those persons out there in the PTAs, in the school boards, you name it, city majors. So it's not easy then to push this agenda of our needs, which are increasingly, as has been shown here, in health, education, community development, if we don't have persons who can push those subjects up there. What is the question? How can we solve this? I think it has been already said. We really need to be active as a community. We need to have more participation, and this goes across the board. Our parents need to go to the meetings, they need to engage, and if they are not able to, talk in English because the native language is Spanish, they need to ask for translation because they have this right. They need to ask for a system that can support our participation, like bringing, taking care of the children when there's meetings, because we're fortunate in this country that there's resources for this kind of support. So that's where we need to be much more active, pushing the envelope, if you wish. But otherwise, we will not have our agenda, which is the U.S. agenda of community development, of a growing population and their needs in education, in health, in urban and transportation, you name it. But if we don't have people at the table putting those words out, we're just going to be needing someone to talk for us. And that's the big challenge, that we cannot continue. And this is relevant here in the state of Utah, as in many other states in the US. But I think it's very, very important here. The good part, I think, is that we have a network of community organizations, community leaders that are committed, and we have partners and friends who will support, but we need to step up. That's why I add up my voice to Maida and how, really needing to do this participation, asking our friends and family to be active, because it really resonates in the impact we are going to have as a community, and I think it's as relevant now as always. Thank you.
I want to remind you that if you have a question, please just raise your hand. We would just walk with the mic once.
I have a question.
You have a question? The mic is going that way. Oh, there's a mic right there.
This one. No, this one doesn't work.
I'll just try to talk really loud. That's not my normal state. Sorry. I come from a mixed race family, and I've always dealt with racism within the family. What would you suggest people learn how to deal with that? Because if you learn how to deal with that within your family, you can learn how to deal with other people.
I'm sorry, I'm going to give you the mic. No, está bien. Está bien.
But yeah, it's like I grew up and my dad was really racist against people that were white or American, and my mother continues to be racist towards people of Latino heritage. Like, she'll go on these huge rants, and I'll just sit there and stare at her, and it's like, she'll just go on and on and on, and finally I'm like,
Please feel free to leave. I think the food is delicious. I was cooking the whole night. I've been cooking for you guys the whole night, so be kind and eat it. It was good, right? My name is Javier Campos. I'm the son of Roque Alejandro and Luz Angela, the grandson of Nestor Julio and Concepcion, Sara and Ramon. I'm the father of Michelangelo and Francesco. Mi nombre es Javier Campos. Soy el nieto de Néstor y Concepción, Ramón y Sara, el hijo de Roque y Luz Ángela, y el padre de Michelangelo y Francesco. Welcome. Welcome. Let's see. Today we are doing one of the multiple events that we have in a Salt Community College because we're celebrating the Hispanic Heritage Month. So on November 1st and 2nd, we will have also Dia de los Muertos. You are more than welcome to join us for this event and have free food and have also some craft activities and have fun and learn about the Mexican-American culture. And today we want to create a safe space. This is not a debate, this is a panel. So we are delighted. We have Senator Luz Escamilla, we have also Ojeda, we have also Mayra Guadalupe, Sedano Robles, Consul Jose B. Borjon, and Álvaro Martinez Jr. And they will introduce themselves and they will talk a little bit what we're doing in the community. So let's start. I have a few questions here that my wonderful students wrote for the panelists, but feel free to ask any questions. Okay? Professor, no, not professor anymore, Assistant Dean Mackenzie Sorensen will be working with the mic. So she's right there, and if you have any questions, you can always raise your hand, or we have another mic on this side, and our panelists will answer. So thank you so much for being here. This is an honor. Would you like to please introduce yourself? And I was raised in the Latino community, we say ladies first. So, would you please?
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. My name is Luz Escamilla. There we go. All the way to the math. But very close. Good afternoon. My name is Luz Escamilla. I'm a state senator. I represent Senate District 1. That is the northwest quadrant in Salt Lake City and half of West Valley. So you are not in my district. And Salt Lake Community College is not, but we do have the West Point Salt Lake Community College campus now, which is beautiful. It's a very exciting development in my district, actually in the back of my backyard, literally. So a $53 million building. It's always nice to bring those things to your district. My name is, like I said, Luz. I was born and raised in Mexico. I grew up in Mexico City, Torreon, Coahuila, Durango, and Tijuana, Baja California. So my dad still work, just passed away 2 months ago, so it's still hard sometimes when I talk about him. But my dad was an engineer by trade, but worked most of the time in banking in Mexico, and so we moved a lot. My mom is also an engineer. She has actually, she was a professor her entire life, and my dad retired as a professor of higher education institutions in Mexico, both engineers. So I'm the only one not in STEM in my family. End up in politics. But I also work in banking. I work for Science Bank. I've been working with Science Bank for the last 12 years and in the Senate for 10. All I can say is when it comes to, it's hard to, I always don't like introducing myself because I don't think I have that great of a story, but I am here because my dad had a dream of the American dream. It really is the beacon of our family's American dream. So both my brother and I had a huge blessing, an opportunity to come and pursue our higher education here in the United States. And that's when I moved here. If I tell you the year, then you'll know how old I am. But you can already Google that. So that was in 1996. Well, gosh, guys, they're like the gasp, like, oh, we're not that old. Moved here to go to school and went to the University of Utah, got both my undergraduate and my master's degree from the University of Utah. And then in 2008, I was crazy enough to run for the state senate, and been there since 2008. So this is my 10th session as a state senator, first Latina in the Senate elected, and the first immigrant ever elected in the legislature. And it's great to be able to share those stories. I've taken me this long to understand the power of stories and the power of sharing them and talking to people about who you are and your background. We all make assumptions, and we know what happens when we make assumptions about people's histories and their stories. And I've learned to really talk more about your stories in order to connect. And I've learned that there's more things that we have in common than the differences between anyone. So I've had to use that in order to be able to accomplish things in the legislature, which is an interesting place to work and try to make things happen as a member of the minority party, as a member of a minority not only from a political perspective but also gender and race and ethnicity. So I've learned that stories do make a difference. So I appreciate any opportunity to share and learn from other people's stories. I live in Rose Park with my husband, and we have 6 children. we have babies, so they keep me busy, and teenagers, and then we have older kids. So we have the gamma, so if you guys want to talk about any of those stages in life, I'm ready. And just, grateful for the opportunity to share more about perspectives and just the importance of listening to others. And again, thank you for the invite.
Hi everyone, my name is Alonso. I have two last names, like a lot of us probably in this room as well, which is kind of cool. I grew up in Peru. I was born in Peru and came to the US when I was 11, actually. So my parents separated when I was about 10, and for the year before I came to the US, my mom had come. So she's the first person in my family to make that trek all the way to the United States. And honestly, I think I owe her everything, right? It wasn't until I came to the US when I was again 11 years old at age, and we left the airport, walked into our apartment that we were sharing with another family, that we entered a room that, that changed my life forever. So what I saw was, there was two beds, two twin-size beds that had been made exactly the same, one for my brother and one for me, and there was an air mattress on the floor that my mom kept for herself. And when I saw that completely broke me. I remember going to the bathroom and honestly crying, right? I was just like, oh my gosh, like my mom, who I thought had left me, who I thought had been separated from me, was doing this for me. And honestly, that's what set me into my trek into education. I said to myself, the only way I can get back to my mom is by getting a higher ed. And so I started in 6th grade in the US. I started to go to school, excelling what I could, which at the moment was math, given I couldn't speak the language. And then eventually, I also had a chance to go to middle school, high school here in Utah. I went to Bryant High School, which then closed down. And then I went to College High School where I finished. And then I was able to get my undergrad at the U in sociology. I did the honors track as well, which allowed me to actually do a lot of research in my own community. I stem from, my mom had worked in the hotel industry, so I was fascinated by it, and that honestly also had a lot to do with the way in which I saw the world, right? How a lot of hospitality industry people are treated in the employment industry and the workforce, I guess. So that also affects the way in which I look at the work that I do currently with undocumented students, right? I'm here to serve our youth, but also the children of my mother, right? Like I'm also here to serve the children of the people who made the long trip to the U.S. to work hard and give back. So I currently have the honor of directing the first training center in Utah. We have it at the University of Utah. So we work with undocumented students as well as the children of undocumented immigrants, and anyone else who needs support in accessing higher ed. I also had a chance to really work with youth in a youth program called Mestizo Arts and Activism, and I see some faces here, which I'm really excited to see that as well. And last but not least, I'm also back in school doing a PhD in sociology and looking at the intersections between immigration, labor, and education.
Buenas tardes, I'm Mayra Sedano, Mayra Guadalupe Sedano Robles. I'm trying to reclaim my whole name. I was born and raised in Jalisco, Mexico. I immigrated to the U.S. as an undocumented immigrant when I was 11 years old. I had the privilege to go to school here, and I graduated from Highland High back in 2005, and I graduated from the U in 2010. Ever since, I've had the privilege to be at Comunidades Unidas, which is a local nonprofit here in Utah. Our mission is to empower Latinas and Latinos to recognize their own potential and become a positive force for change in the larger community. The reason why I identify myself as an organizer is because of my immigrant experience. So I lived as an undocumented immigrant when DACA did not exist. Like myself and so many others, we had the privilege to go to college, and we benefited from in-state tuition. In 2014, my uncle was detained, and definitely that that empowered me to continue to do the work that I do. I feel very honored to work with a lot of youth, to work with a lot of people that have the passion to create positive changes in our communities. And yeah, thank you.
Buenas tardes. Okay, this is working. Buenas tardes, my name is Álvaro Martinez Magallón. I currently go by Junior. So if you guys see me around the halls or whatever, please say hi. I'm honestly just your average student. Many people ask me, well, how did you become student body president? Yeah. No, is it working? Now it's working. Okay, this one works? This one works? Okay. Like I was saying, many people ask me, well, how did you become student body president? And I just said, I just tried. Like, honestly, I went to Hunter High School. I moved here when I was 9 years old. I'm from Michoacán, Mexico. And my life completely changed once I moved to the U.S. Sorry, I didn't think I was going to be emotional about this, but I hope that this panel, because I feel honored to be here with all these wonderful people, and I've lived through many different difficult situations throughout my life. And people look at me and they're just like, how did you do it? They talk to me about different things. Their parents were detained, they were sent back to Mexico, and I haven't had that experience in my life yet. My mom is undocumented, and we live in fear every day because we're not allowed to travel anywhere because we're afraid that there's going to be an immigration stop somewhere, you know? And this is the first time that I get to talk to people about being successful, and my story is just an average story, but the change that we can make as average people is huge. So I hope that you look at people like these people right here and you make a difference, because it really matters. The average person really matters, and I made a difference in my community because I'm here and I'm representing every student at Salt Lake Community College. And I hope that you guys go out there as high school students or as just an average person and make a difference in your community, because it really does matter.
Buenas tardes. My name is Jose Vicente Borjón López Coterilla. That's the long version, and that's what I usually use. Jose Borjón. I'm a Mexican government official representing the governor of Mexico here in the state of Utah. I studied in a public university in Mexico City and have had the experience of traveling abroad in different countries, but especially in the United States, and that's where my career has been since the early beginnings, and the main interest has been for me to serve to my community, and I have been doing that to the best of my abilities. And each case, each story, each day we can help our community, who is large and vibrant in this country. Over 12 million Mexicans here in this state. Over 35 million have Mexican origin in the United States. Over 300,000 in the state of Utah have Mexico as origin. So the footprint of my country, of my heritage, and my culture, of our culture, is important and relevant as always. And my interest and my mission and my goal is that this be respected, this be taken into consideration, and that our people who are here, who are contributing, who are studying, who are living and fighting, that their efforts can be recognized. And I do this as a council does, which is to use the best of its bullet pulpit and talking with government officials, but also hoping to work and network with organizations that are committed to the same mission, and that is how we multiply an effort to have an impact in the community, and that is why we honor ourselves to have, like in this table, friends who are working with the community, who we add up through our government projects, and this way we can have an impact. I think that it's relevant as always to recognize the importance of the Hispanic or Latino community. Really, that's something to go into deeper. And what are we going to do in the near future as a community, as a diverse country of immigrants, as this has been always the United States, and at the same time, how we, in my case, for example, in Mexico, how can we take the best advantage of such a large diaspora of Mexican origin here in the United States, so that also my country can benefit of this large presence. And that is, the kind of questions we ask ourselves every day, and how we try to solve them makes a difference. So I'm interested in hearing about you, your interests, your challenges, so that we can also continue doing our work better to serve those who are here. And that's something I appreciate. Thank you everyone for this opportunity to share a little bit on what we are doing as an office, but also as individuals to have an impact for our community here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. About 15 years ago, when I moved from Colombia, South America, I started taking my classes here at Soleil Community College. In fact, Assistant Dean McKenzie was my teacher and a big mentor. And I was told, my first class, I was told, there's no way. With that accent and lack of language, there's no way. I got that from somebody, and I remember Professor Sorensen told me, yes you can, yes you can. And I finished here, I moved to University of Utah. I took my classes at University of Utah. Senator Luis Camilla was in one of my classes with Irene Ota presenting. And I got my master from the University of Utah, working on my PhD as well. So they told us, you can't, and we answered, sí se puede. That's what we do, sí se puede. These questions are from my students. I'm a Mexican-American student, social work student, and I honor every single question because they're the future, and they care about the diversity, and equity, and equality. And so the first question will be, and it's open to the panel. It says, let me see if I can read my glasses. What is the
basic studies? They didn't finish school back in Mexico. So we bring like adult literacy programs to the community partner, and we basically help, change the dynamics in a family, like the one you were describing your situation, and how it's very important to our Mexican parents understand that they are now in a new country, understand how the dynamics of local regulations go and culture. And we do this by bringing educational programs. We have a partnership with a great Centro de la Familia, where they bring through us adult literacy programs, and those who maybe didn't finish the school, the elementary, middle school, are able as adults to finish. And that changed a lot, because you see the pride when parents who are working make an effort to finish those programs, and as family and as community we support them. It can change the dynamics. And at the same time, I do also believe by educating them in the issues of health and nutrition, and that's where we find also great partnerships through many of our programs that we develop in the community. For example, with Comunidades Unidas, where members of the community, or parents like yours, are active and are being, giving their time, their effort, going and everything. We have members, for example, at the consulate, talking a little bit on everyday information in financial literacy, in education, in health, in nutrition. And maybe our community is first not as receptive, but they get engaged because it is also a community member who is talking about this dynamics. So I think there are a lot of possibilities working through all this great network of community organizations that we are working together, and our focus is the first generation Mexican parents, so that they can also help you and the youth who is studying to understand and support, because I know there's needs. I know sometimes you do have to both work and study at the same time, but we just need to find that network of possibilities. Lastly, I do also think that all of you, as has been said, are examples of this leadership, of this youth leadership, because you're doing this first step that maybe our parents or didn't finish the school, didn't go to college, but that brings you a lot of possibility, empowerment, and inside the family, we need to find the possibility to share that. And I know it's not easy, and sometimes it can be done through partnership with organizations that work in the community, like some of the ones I've just shared.
I have another question for another student. It says, in regards to the children who were separated from their parents and put in, and I quoted the student, concentration camps, are they all back with their families? If no, what is being done about it? What are your thoughts?
So the answer is no. I think to me it's been very, it's been like a very horrible experience to see this happening in our country. It's shame. I mean, it's really about shame. So this, when the first story started breaking, this was in, say, April, when things were before the official policy was implemented. So again, maybe a little bit of background. We're talking about the zero tolerance policy that was implemented by the Department of Homeland Security. So this was not law. So Congress did not approve this. This was the executive branch taking, to my view, superseding their ability within the Constitution to implement a policy like this, to start separating children at entrance. So, and it's a very, and again, I'm not an expert, but very convoluted because of our immigration law. So it's not, there was already children coming and attempting to enter the country. So what will happen is you have minors. So talk about children. Do we agree that children is anyone under 18? Because I still have people that argue with me that if it's a 16-year-old, it's not a child, whatever. So by definition, it's legal children, meaning under 18, okay? So they will surrender themselves at a port of entry. So if you think about our border, so a port of entry could be obviously any airport or any port of entry from, Tijuana, San Diego, San Isidro. You have San Luis, Rio Colorado, and San Luis, Arizona is another port of entry, Nogales, Ciudad Juarez and El Paso. So you have several port of entries. And they will, just, and I'm talking about children from the age of 8, some 5-year-olds sometimes, very rare, but you will have some little ones just attempting to enter the country and surrendering themselves. And then they will be, at that point, detained. So now, let's use our imagination here, because unless you've been there, imagine you are now detained with someone that's a law enforcement, it's an agent, or a law enforcement agent, which in our cases are Border Patrol, and then your immigration enforcement, so U.S. Customs. So for a while, and this is where they bring up the previous administration, the Obama administration, this started happening about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, prior to the elections of 2016. there was an increase because of a lot of, I guess, crises happening in Central America mostly. So these children are mostly from Central America. And why do we need to understand this is because it really does change. If you think about refugees, and it has to do with what's happening and the disturbance that's taking place in their countries of origin. So for many of these parents, especially fighting or trying to survive the violence created by gangs and other criminal activity in Central America, they will just pay all the money they have, they will sell everything they have and send their babies or their children for a better life, and hoping that it was going to be better than what they have. So just picture how bad it was for you to think that sending your 8-year-old on his own to try to go to this country of freedom and liberties and protection will be better, knowing that you don't know what's going to happen. So now, those children that were coming by themselves, those were ones that we've been talking since the previous administration, and they were, they were not getting or granting asylum per se, or there's a refugee status, that's where you apply for, so you get into all the convoluted stuff. But then, this zero tolerance policy that started in March, and they tested the policy before it was actually a real policy by the Department of Homeland Security, and I had an opportunity to sit with my congressman, which is Congressman Chris Stewart, represents me, with him in April. He was not aware of this policy. So this new policy is the one where parents may come with their children, so they're attempting to enter the country, surrender themselves, and then they were being separated within 24 hours of asking for asylum. Okay, they were seeking asylum, which is not illegal. So this is where you get all the technical stuff, right? So me or anyone seeking asylum is not illegal for you to seek asylum to the United States of America. It's legal. So what was happening now was they were being separated. And then they were saying, well, these are children on their own. But yeah, they were on their own because you grabbed them and took them away. So here's where it gets so convoluted. So that zero tolerance policy was saying we're going to separate them, but it was massive numbers. And instead of processing fast, because we don't have those resources for our own immigration system, because by the way, I don't know if you know this, but our U.S. immigration system is the only one that's self-funded. So we don't necessarily appropriate funds for immigration processes. Those are self-funded. So we pay, if you're an immigrant, you're paying, it's paid by itself, the system. But we don't have enough resources. There's not enough judges. There's not enough. It's just a reality. So they were backlogged, and they're like, "Oh snap! What do we do with all these babies?" Oh, okay, we're going to subcontract prisons or facilities, whatever we want to call them, detention camps. You name them, because some of them were in literally cages. Not all of them. We can go over one by one. But it was this idea that we're going to be detained, and then just wait. So parents were having their own processes. Where it got a little bit, and I have to say where it was super weird and horrible and disgusting, was when they were separating them. Separating babies is terrible as is. The fact that you would take a baby that's being breastfed by mom and take the baby away. But then separating them and sending them miles away. He was like, why would you have to send them from, Nogales to New York at centers over there? There's no explanation to that. I think the outcry was big, not big enough. And this is where it does, yes, okay. Sorry, this is I'm super passionate about this issue because I don't know that there's a solution yet. So the commitment was because the courts, this was taken to courts and cases were taken to courts. And as you know, this is part of our system. We have checks and balances. This is the beauty of America and our Constitution. There are protections for people, regardless of their immigration status. They are still human beings and they're protected by the Constitution. So there were cases that were taken to courts and the courts put injunctions and they reacted, said, yeah, this is unconstitutional. You cannot do this. You need to reunite children. And even if they don't get to be, to get an asylee status, they still have rights and they should be able to be before a judge, but actually have someone to speak for them because they were putting babies before judges to respond to judges. How is that reasonable? So I think there's no...
Excuse me, Senator, we have 3 students that have questions, and we only have
probably 4 minutes.
Okay.
Could 30 seconds, could you wind up? Or-
Yes. They haven't fixed the problem. And until there's not enough outcry, they're not gonna fix it. So to everybody else that talks about, we're all talking about our stories, this will be something that I think you're gonna go down in history, and your great-grandkids are gonna be like, what were you doing? Because this is gonna be in our US history books, I can guarantee you that. You may wanna be in the right side of the story on this one, or history, and do something.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jessie, and I was just wondering that as a high school student, I've heard so many different things, one thing here, one thing another, and it's really confusing. And so when I want to try and stand up, I don't know what specifically I need to stand up for, and sometimes you don't know whether to stand up for this, which one's more important. So I was just wondering, what is something that we need to stand up for? What is the most important thing, and how are we going to change that, and we need to change it too?
Thank you, Jesse. And we have about 3 minutes to, let's just try to answer so we can move to the next question.
All right, so thank you for your question, and my what I would recommend is definitely, first of all, look at your talents, right? We all have different talents. Some of us are really good, talking in front of people. Other of us are really good in social media. Find your talent. That's number one, and then you're gonna feel it. It's super, and I think that the magic happens when we're able to connect our talents with things that we're passionate about. So for me, it's immigration, but for other colleagues of mine, are health, or for others, are access to different things. So super important. One, find your talent and then figure out your passion. You're gonna feel it.
Just an additional comment to that, it's really important that you look at your experience and acknowledge what's important to you. What is it that you've gone through? What is it that you're passionate about? Talk to others about it. I'm glad that you're looking for change. That's really something important that people of our generation need to do a lot more of, but it's up to you as a person to realize what it is that I want to make a change in.
Hi, my name is Elena, and I'm also a high school student. And I was just wondering, would you guys say that being undocumented pushed you guys harder to work harder to get where you guys are today?
That's a great question. Thank you. So I grew up undocumented in Utah. I still have DACA, as I mentioned, and that's always a contention. Is or it's a challenge that we face, right? Because there is this myth that in order to be successful as an undocumented person, you have to work harder, right? And that's unfair in many ways, right? Because we then expose ourselves and our bodies and raise expectations to a higher bar, which again only continue to perpetuate that push against our communities. And honestly, that's something that we've been dealing with a lot. When we highlight the stories of undocumented students, we only highlight those of the ones with 4.0s and the ones who are doing extremely well, which yes, that's one side of the story, absolutely. But in reality, we need to focus on the entire community. Where are the gaps? Where do we need to focus our attention, right? I think that right now, for example, the conversation has shifted towards DACA, which rightfully so, yes, it's an important issue. It's 800,000 of us who are currently impacted by it, but let's not lose sight of the other 10 million people who are not being affected by DACA, right? Who are actually scared as well and need those resources and support, and we need to also draw attention to that particular community. So I think honestly let's not lose sight of the bigger picture, which is how do we humanize our stories ourselves, and how do we put resources back in the community to make sure that we can all get our piece of the pie, guys.
So my name is Lupita, and I'm also a high school student. I was adding on to what you guys were talking about, these children being detained and separated from their families. I was wondering, how do you guys feel about the stories that are coming out right now about those kids in those camps, right? Being mentally and sexually abused by, and their voices being barely heard and nothing has been done from what I heard.
Personally, I think that it has opened a lot of wounds. Definitely, it has been very emotional as someone that crossed the border when I was 11. That's definitely one. But also, I got reminded that unfortunately, as a nation, it's not the first time that we're doing this to a group, right? So super, super important that we acknowledge that it has happened to other communities, our Native American tribes, right, and other communities, right, Asian Americans, right. So unfortunately, we've been here before. So super important that we recognize that, and that we continue to organize to prevent that from happening, right? So definitely a very complex issue, so many different levels, but super important, and I just want to bring that back, right? That unfortunately, history is repeating itself.
We would like to thank Senator Luz Escamilla, Consul Jose Borjon, Maria Guadalupe Sedano Robles, Alonso Reina, and Alvaro Martinez Jr. And we want to thank you as well. We hope this is the first of many, many panels. I want to remind you as well that on November 1st and 2nd, we are having meetings, Dia de los Muertos, here at Soleil Community College. You're more than welcome to learn. We're more than welcome to enjoy craft. We're having food. So it's a celebration. Thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful day.